Hello, good afternoon. Can you hear me? Just Hello, Councillor Zainab. Please let me know that you can hear and see me clearly. We're waiting for our guests to show up. Okay. Hello, Ijoma. Coach Ijoma, welcome, ma'am. And Councillor Zainab, welcome. Okay. Okay. I'm waiting. So, Coach Juba, if you can see me, Mr. Tohib, can you just request to join this online video so that I can bring you on camera, please? Thank you. I'm trying to invite you. You're actually supposed to just click on this and show up. I don't know. Meta is metaing us right now. So all I need you to do is just request to join, or I can see you. If I can see you online, I can't see you online right now. Okay. This is serious, serious, serious. Thank you. Thank you very much, my darling sister Fatima Adiola. I can see you. I can see you here. Thank you for being here. I can see you. Mr. Tahib, I've asked you to join, so please. Yeah.
Good. Yes, I got it. Finally.
Finally, good afternoon. Or is it good morning over there? How are you?
I'm doing fine. Good morning.
Good morning.
Here.
Good day. Welcome.
Thank you so much.
Okay, so it's such a pleasure to have you. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for the invitation.
Okay, I'm still waiting for Mr. Jube to join us later. All right, so dear ladies and gentlemen of the Metaverse, thank you for being here. Today on Let's Chat series, we are talking about the legacy of men as fathers. And it's such an interesting topic, one that until recently I didn't even know that I had so much, so much passion for. So I'm so excited to be here with Mr. Tohib Adejumo, someone that I followed on Metaverse for quite a long time. So I'm one of his silent fans, and thank you so much. When I mentioned the synopsis or when I mentioned the introduction of the topic, he was like, yes, let's do this without beating a beat. There's one more person that I'm hoping that will join us. I'm trying to contact him now, and I hope he joins us directly. Then I'll be able to bring him on immediately. But while we do that, so Mr. Tohib, you've been in the diaspora. What part of the diaspora are you exactly, if you don't mind saying?
Oh, yeah, I live in the United States, and I've been here.
Okay.
Yes.
For how long?
Okay, this is the 11th, going to the 12th year of me being here.
That's such a long time. Did you go with your family, or was it just you when you first started out?
Well, it was just me. I migrated to join my parents.
Okay.
And yes, it was just me. Well, a year after I got married in Nigeria, and then we started the whole.
Okay. Okay. That's fantastic. So you've been there. So as a family man, say, give or take a few years after a decade, right? How has that been for you, having your family there with you and all that? How different is the United States in terms of raising family to being here in Nigeria?
Okay, so I didn't get to raise. I didn't get to I started my family here. So when I came to the US about 11, 12 years ago, a year after that, I went back to Nigeria to get married. So
Okay.
and so my wife joined me, I think 2 years after that. And
Okay.
so I really don't I do have reference points about how is it different, but it's not from a personal experience. So I never get to do daddy, husband and wife in Nigeria, but I do know people, and I grew up in Nigeria, so that would be my reference point, and maybe a little bit of Nollywood, our husband and wife interacting on the Nollywood of those days, the Yoruba movies. So, but yeah, but jokes apart, it is different. And if I'm judging from the reference point of my friends, of my family who are married in Nigeria, versus myself over here, so I would say it's a little bit different. Not huge difference, because the world is globalized now, and the free exchange of information and culture and everything. But yeah, it's different in the way that how would I say it? The functionality of the family and how the roles of the men and the roles of women are much more like clear and cut and well structured in Nigeria compared to here,
Okay.
because the situation here, it's much more fluid.
Okay, so when you said the situation here is much more fluid, and you are talking about the Nollywood movies and everything, for me, it begins to make me wonder. You joined your parents, right? So what are the distinct expectations that fatherhood in the diaspora poses for a young migrant African
Yeah.
male
Okay.
right now? What were the things that, if we look at it, immediately sparks an interest to say, wow, this is expected from a young African migrant and then male, for instance, before we even begin to talk about fatherhood, because it is the men that make up fatherhood, isn't it?
Yeah.
But what distinct thing as father, as men, do you have to live by because of where you're coming from?
Well, I mean, like coming from Nigeria and then getting to the United States, and as a young man, like you are expected like to, I mean, get a good education and get a job and get yourself positioned to start a family. I think that's a norm. It's changing a little bit, sadly, but that is the mindset of like if you want to get married, you got to get a place for yourself. You got to be able to take care of yourself and the family that you're open to start. So that was the mindset when I came to the United States, and I would say for many of my friends, it's the same thing. Like the bread winning type, like thinking, okay, yeah, I have to have this, I have to have that, which is for me, it's my case was a little bit strange because I started planning when I got to the US in 2013. Oh, Mr. Judy's
Yeah.
here.
Yes, it
Yes.
is.
I finally had to. Can you hear me?
Finally, nice to have you here joining
Yeah,
us too,
thank
sir.
you. I had to use my
Welcome.
phone. My laptop was not giving me what it should give me.
Oh, I'm so sorry
I
about
don't know
that.
what it's
Thank
at
you
all.
for also agreeing to do this. Yeah, so Mr. Taib was just talking about, the expectation of a typical young migrant African man in the diaspora. He's been in the US for almost 12 years. So
Okay.
could you complete that thought before, we ask Mr. Jobel, his own opinion
Yes.
as well?
Okay. Yeah. So, so when I wanted to get married, because it was a very quick turnaround, a year in America, and I was ready to go back to Nigeria to get married. And some of my some of the family like threw a fit, like you don't have
Yeah.
the money yet, and all of that. But to cut the long story short, it was different in the sense that like I knew I had to get a place. I had to get a place that is separate from my parents' place. And I remember my mom saying, you guys, you can just
Why
live
the
in this,
hurry?
yeah, you can just live in this little room. I was living in a very, very little room. And she was saying like, you know what, I don't understand you these children. There was this migrant, there was this like husband and wife that came from Benin, and they live in this place. So what do you think you are? And I was like, okay, I understand, thank you, but our, no matter how difficult it was financially, I was like, okay, we're starting off, we're in another country, it would be best for us like to start off like in a very separate place, in away from the big dad and mom's house. So yeah, so that was like a kind of like, you want a kind of like autonomy. Over here, America, it's all about autonomy and things like that. So you want to, yeah.
Wow. Okay, so just before I go on to Mr. Joe, I just want to ask a quick question. And you can choose to think about it before, while he takes his own question. Do you think you would have chosen to get married at the time you did if you were in Nigeria, based on your financial circumstances?
Yeah. So Yeah, that's something I've thought a lot about, especially when I try to encourage some of my friends. So, well, it it can go both ways. Like I would like because I was already engaged like 3 years before I left Nigeria,
Mm,
and I was only waiting. Okay, I need to get this job and this stability and be
so,
able to do things, and that was the lag. But I would say that I had relatives, right? I had relatives that have traveled to the United States like way beforehand, and
mm,
I still got like I got married before them. So it helps that like that I have that kind of autonomy in America. But what I would say is that I know people that they still had that kind of autonomy, but yeah, but I don't think I would have gotten married there if I was in Nigeria. Let me just be honest, 'cause I may not have that money.
okay.
But
All
maybe
right,
they'll take me back.
let me let you breathe on that a little bit so it doesn't seem choking. Mr. Juve, thank you for joining us. And you've been based in what country now? And for how long, sir?
I'm in the UK.
Okay.
Barely 2 years. To be 3 years by December.
Wow.
Let me say, sorry for being late to the program.
Oh no, it's okay. So, what's the most? So that means you've spent a longer time here in Nigeria than before you went over there.
Yeah,
What's the one thing that speaks cultural difference once you got there as a man?
there are lots of them.
But what's the first thing that you noticed? Or if there was a culture shock that you had to contend with as a man, what was that?
um, for me personally, I think maybe because of the fact that I was already married, so the
Mm,
shock came from the reaction to my children and not exactly to me. There
mm,
had never been a need to sit down with the kids to talk about what it is and how it plays out and everything. But when
wow.
I settled initially, if I could show you pictures, they were actually the only dark-skinned children in the whole school.
Mm,
And only black family in that community at that time. It's a small community, not more than 26,000 people. When you watch those movies and you see in the movies that everybody knows everybody,
everybody.
a fly drops dead, everybody knows what happened. So that kind of situation that it was. So for me, it was like learning to sit down and communicate. And this time, communicating was about helping
Mm,
to really understand, not just building a sense of identity in themselves, but also understanding that people are different. The way they're
mm,
raised may make them think the way they are, but it doesn't make you less of a person. Before coming in, those are things that didn't go through the mind because we didn't have to deal with
mm.
it.
To talk about it,
So
yes.
that was the first thing that really
Hmm.
helped me. That was
So I hear you say that for the first time you're having to be conscious for, especially with your children, to be conscious of who you are as an African, away from, the cultural norms and all that. So in that sense, does it mean, how have you been able to use, and this is for both of you really, and I think Mr. Toyib can actually start. How have you been able to use the things that you learned here in Nigeria to manage that transition effectively as an individual before also talking about you managing it alongside your family?
Okay. So for me, like again, I mean, I didn't start a family in Nigeria. In Nigeria, regarding, uh, can you please repeat the question very well so I can get it?
Okay, so the question is, what are the things that you learned here in Nigeria that helped you to transit as a man,
Yeah.
as a young man
Mhm.
in the diaspora? But then, particularly, how are you able to use some of the things? What are things that you learned here as a young African man
Yeah.
that has effectively helped shape the kind of family that you are bringing up right now?
Absolutely. Yeah. So the one of the things is like in Nigeria is the grit. grit means like being able to follow through. It gets difficult, but you got to follow through. So that's one thing, and people who know me, like I mention that word a lot. That if I'm grateful to Nigeria for anything, it's great, right? Things may be hard, so you follow through. You know, if you don't know, understand the homework, you got to do it because they're gonna whoop you back if you go back to school. So the not giving up part, right? That's in the early days of my marriage with financial, and it was a little bit tough, and but knowing that like, this is what I want, I think this I want this married life, I want family, I want this. This is how we are raised up to be. So that is an anchor that I always go back. Okay, and this may the second point is very technical and very is that reading. Right? I learned how to read very well, and so everything like information is very, very important. So reading about things, right? Reading about marriage before and like reading about when the child is coming. I remember when my wife was pregnant with our first son, about like 7 months, I think the last trimester, and she was like very much, what's going on? She said, we are gonna have a child for the first time. We are alone. We are here. We were living like in a community outside of New York at that time. And I was like, oh yeah, it makes sense. So you are afraid? It didn't even occur to me that to be afraid or to think about it. Like, oh, it makes sense. What did I do? I went on Amazon and bought a book. Like for first year dad, like a father wrote it for people who are going to be fathers for the first time. So okay, yeah, let me get that. I read the whole thing, knew what you expected. Of course, you're gonna be thrown like curveballs, all that. But again, like thinking, like grit and reading. You are not the first person that is going through this transitions and these challenges, cultural something like that. Some have actually like gone before that. So if you have the ability like to read or to listen, in my own case, it's much more reading. Like that gives you like it gives you some shock absorber, right? In the long run.
In the long run. Okay, thank you very much for sharing that. I can imagine your wife being a first-time mom, in that space, and then you waking up and saying, "I didn't know that I was going to be that's something to be afraid of." So, Mr. Jibel, for you, what was that thing that you took from here over the years of staying here to becoming a dad over there? What was that thing that our culture has given you to shape your fatherhood?
Well, I would agree with what Eva said. I was going to mention two things. He's already mentioned one of them, hard work, but I was also going to talk about values. I've seen, and I'm not condemning any culture, but I've seen here where kids are angry with their parents, and it's actually telling your parents off. It's actually telling your father words like, things that you can't mention, telling your parents to shut up. Those are things that could never happen. So the value cherish, and I do not play with it. And the kids know that. But in doing that, what I have learned to do, or what I've tried to do consistently, is to make them see how to balance it. That you do not look at the fact that you're in a new culture, not accept everything as being all right. So there are a lot of times that they would say certain things. Oh, so where did you learn that? Or they learned it in school, and then I'll be like, okay, so let's look at it and make into what it's meant. But the thing is that when we have these discussions with time, they're beginning to appreciate certain things. For example, I'm in the UK, but I have lots of persons who are in the UK that are not from here. I give you an example. You know someone who is from the Netherlands. But surprisingly, even though she's also white skinned, she would never call an older person
by their name.
Would rather use auntie. And so it was a talking point for my kids that, you see, it's not just an African thing, but it is something that it's
that we should
that,
take note of.
and so the fact that lots of persons here can call their parents back, or older people by name, those are not things that we do. We try and add the word auntie or to even make it better. You understand?
Better, yeah.
So another thing that I was going to talk about is the hard work, because when I moved in, I noticed that no matter what happens, no matter how you perform in class, the kids will always move to the next class. And so that's
Yeah.
equivalent to
Mm.
primary 6. That's
Mm.
and can't read, but they would still move on to secondary.
True.
So because there's this thing here that every child is rewarded, and you make every child feel great, and even if
Mm.
failing, you still do not, you look for a way of sugarcoat. And so there's a need to let them know that sugarcoating, fine, that's okay, but there's still a need to be hardworking, because if you're not, then average, and what average is not what you want.
Mm.
Things that are,
Mm. Wow, those are powerful things that, I hear you talk about hard work, I hear him talk about grit, and for me, it's something that always seems to stand out, a typical Nigerian from just a lay-by or overwhelmed Nigerian, in sense of knowing that there is always something within us that inherently brings us to that spot of, I'm not going to give up, I'm going to continue to push through. But those are fantastic values that we have. But it's not without much, without overflogging it. It's also important for us to begin to talk about some certain struggles that comes with being an African in the diaspora. And some of it comes from the fact that, again, our culture, as fair as it wants to be, can sometimes be perceived as patriarchal, right?
Yeah.
Now, moving into a non-patriarchal society, there are bound to be certain challenges. What are those challenges that you've both faced, and how have you navigated them?
Let me tell you answer first. You started first.
Okay.
All right. So, well, and before I start, let me preface by saying, like, personally, I don't have like problem with patriarchy. I like it when patriarchy is all about functioning of the society, functioning of the family. So it makes sense. Patriarchy, matriarchy, like names, like how do they say that? What are the names? Like,
To break
yeah,
it
yeah.
down for the layman who may be wondering what are we talking
All right.
about in terms of
So,
patriarchy.
yeah.
Let's
All
break
right.
it down a little
Patriarchy
bit.
is like, it's a system of community, of value, of family that values like men as being like the owner of power in a society, and matriarchy, just the other ways, like mother, like women own the power, which really, if we look at it, both actually exist, but some have a higher degree in certain societies. So, for example, in Yoruba society, they will say something like ọmọ tó bá yàn ní ti bàbá or something like that, which can, but which I wouldn't say that's a patriarchy. That's just wrong. But a patriarchy way
The
is that
translation,
yeah,
though,
right.
the
That,
translation.
yeah. Oh, translation is that it's the good child that is the child of the father. The children that do
Exactly.
not do good, like that's their mothers. Well,
That's
and
the
I'm
thing. Exactly.
just saying right now that it's just wrong. That's not patriarchy. Patriarchy is like this. Or let me give you a better example of patriarchy. Like Baba Luman like it's like the father has to give
It's
the daughter
the child.
to the husband, right? So
Mhm.
that's patriarchy. The father has the final say in that. So that's patriarchy, for example. So that there is nothing intrinsically wrong with that, but I understand, like, coming from a patriarchal environment, we are humans tend not to be okay with the middle. We always like extreme. So what we have seen from Nigeria, from where most of us come from, is the extreme extreme manifestation of patriarchy, where women will be looked down upon if they given birth to daughters. So that's like an extreme. So, but to come back to your question, what are the struggles of moving from a highly patriarchal society to America, which is matriarchy? There's no patriarchy anymore right now in the family. It is challenging to a certain extent, but I would say it is very challenging if you are not a person that's constantly reflecting, right? If you value structure more than the function, than the function, then you will struggle a lot. And what that means is that if you just want to say, well, this is how it is, this is how it's supposed to be, and this is how it's going to be, without any why to it, then you're going to struggle. You're going to say, why do I have to do this? You know, I am the man of the house, right? You're going to keep on saying that. So that's going to be a lot of challenge. I'm not saying that it's not going to be a challenge at all if you are thinking about the function, right? Because something that we have been ingrained with since children, it's very, very hard like to pick apart. So I'm just going to give myself as an example. Sometimes I'll be doing, and I like doing, like when I'm cleaning and things like that, I'm gonna get dinged for my brothers for saying, when I'm cleaning, I enjoy it because it gives me like the head space to think. I like to think about it. Maybe I want to write story or something like that. So those mindless tasks, it helps me. So that's a function, right? But because I'm still a Nigerian man from the core, then I'll just think, what is this woman doing? Sitting over there? So that's occasionally I'm just thinking, okay, what am I doing? I don't have to do this. So despite the function that those things are serving, so it is a challenge. Really, it's a challenge, and it's from what I've heard and known from people, it does cause a lot of conflict, right? It does cause a lot of conflict because it starts going to perception where people think, okay, what are you taking me for? Because we are here and there, and then the finances come into it, and then like, okay, so you're doing this, so what do you think? So it goes. I'm not sure if I'm still answering the question, but it is challenging, very challenging. I'm not gonna like. It's one of the hurdles that people have to cross. Right? People have to cross and say, okay, me doing this doesn't change that I'm a man. Right. There's one thing I like to say this to my wife. See, I don't need to prove to you that I'm a man, that I'm the man of the house. If I need to prove that, there's a problem in the marriage, right? So, so that, and perhaps because I didn't, and I'm gonna go back, I didn't get to do any marriage stuff in Nigeria, so maybe it was easier to transition into this. Well, it's America, you just got to do it, and you are rolling on with it. Even with that, I still have some of my challenges. So I'll throw it to Mr. Job. Like, he has both experiences, really, really good. Right. So yeah, it is challenging, even for someone who has been here before the marriage actually kickstarts. But it takes like constant reflection, and it's just a function. Is the family functioning because of this, right? You know, it doesn't matter who makes the breakfast, but does it keep the children healthy? Does it give you back the time to bond? Things like that. That's the way I help myself when those thoughts come to me. You know, you're sweeping. What is going on? So those are the way I route that thought. Like, okay, yeah. So what?
Function over hierarchy. I like that. I like that a lot. But I'm not allowed to hear from Mr. Jube as well. So what's your yes, same question. Yes. We can't hear you. I think there's the audio we can't hear. Or is it just me? We lost your audio.
I think you're muted. He's muted.
Okay, you can check if you're muted. It's on the screen on the right-hand side. And if you're using an earpiece or something, I want to check it as well. Okay. We still can't hear anything, Sam. All right, I think I'll go to the next question while I wait for him to join. There's something that you mentioned about that, oh, you still struggle with it, and then you just use that that thought of function. I mean, so long as your children are having to eat breakfast, life goes on, in that sense. So there's still that challenge, I think, that sometimes it's not even how you perceive yourself, it is how the society perceives you
Yeah.
as a man. It is how your spouse perceives you as a man that would inform certain behaviors or certain challenges that you go through. So in that sense, what have you noticed amongst your peers, and what have you learned to do differently that sets you apart from having to kind of become overwhelmed with how the society continues to perceive men and our expectations of
Right.
men?
Yeah, I think that's a very good question. The one thing that I would say before is like what has helped me is like knowing thyself. Like at the end of the day, I'm accountable to myself, and I'm a Muslim, I'm accountable to my Lord, right? So, like Chief Ebenezer Obey says, Kosogma Telida, there is no way you can like actually make people be content with whatever you do. But it comes with a lot of soul searching. It is very true. It's not like I can sit here and just say, well, I don't care about what anybody think. Like people who say that they actually scare me. People say like, I don't care about what anybody say. Oh, that they scare me because they can do and undo. Of course, like what people think of us matter, right? What the society thinks of us matter. So, and I take those information and I take it into perspective, right? Especially my Islamic perspective, my Muslim perspective. What are the core functions of a man? Protect, provide, right? So that like protect, provide, care. So once I'm able, like once I'm able to like click, check off those boxes, then frankly, alhamdulillah, like thanks to God, there is no one way. Even like it's easier for humans like to put people in boxes, because that way we don't have to do the mental processing of like finding them out. That's why stereotypes are. That's why like people do stereotype. Like, so if I see you, I see Sister Amina, I see you in hijab, it would take a lot for me to ask about you, to think about your uniqueness, to difference. But it would be very easy to just think, okay, Sister Amina, hijab sister, this is how they are. That's really, really easy.
Belongs to, yes.
Yeah, that is really, really easy. But so we want to do the easy thing, but the thinking is not actually that easy. So and I think what helps me is my education in psychology, so psychology bias and things like that. Is that when I try to take someone from like as a unique person. So if I do that to other people, I want to do that to myself. I am unique, right? The thought of other people about me, yes, I take that into account to see, okay, how am I showing out as a man? But okay, I think it's back. Once those criteria of masculinity has been met, I'm providing for my family, I'm protecting my family, I'm caring for my family, then the way that manifests, frankly, like it's not the most important thing, right? So yeah, I would have trouble in my own masculinity when I'm not able to provide, when I'm not able to protect, when I'm just like sitting down, right, not doing anything, so that would hurt my ego more than anything. So that's how I even like, yes, the society count, the way my wife sees me count, but as long as I'm putting my own effort in, meeting the bars set by my Lord, my value, my Islamic value, my cultural value, then I'm good. And again, I cannot fit into every cultural like stereotype boxes. Even the prophets of God, they don't all fit into that like specific macho going to war, or being hungry.
We had carpenters among them. We had shepherds among them.
Right. Yeah.
We had kings as well
Exactly.
amongst them.
Yes. Yeah. So in that way, like one can rest in one's uniqueness, and then you don't have to get
Okay.
constantly being judged by, but because the outside world is changing every time, especially in America, the society is changing really fast. So if you
Mm.
don't have values that are strong, like a pest, like a mountain that holds you, you're just going to be rolling around. If you stand for nothing, if you don't stand for anything, you fought for everything because you don't have like a fixed something, right? The, yeah, so let me throw it to my brother here.
Okay,
I don't know
so
if you
Pedro, welcome back. It's nice to have you here again. For those of you who are just joining us, this is the Let's Chat series of Enterprise Facebook group, and we are talking about the legacy of men as fathers, Africa to the world. So the question we asked before you went out was, what was it like transitioning in terms of knowing the expectations of coming from a patriarchal society like Nigeria? Like, we know that traditionally or culturally, it is expected that the man is the head, as quote and unquote, of the family. What is that like now, moving to a society where is there a defined hierarchy in the family? And if so, what was the struggle like for you?
Okay. Let me not sound self-righteous, but it didn't turn out to be a struggle for my family. Why? Because while growing up, the kind of
Mm.
family that I grew up in, my dad did cook for us. There were times when, like on
Wow.
Fridays, we expected that he would do that because the way he works, or he worked then, he had to pick us from school on Friday and make lunch for us while my mom was back at work. So, and then growing up, all of us as kids, we had just one girl, or we have just one girl and one right now, and then five guys. So when she left for school, the rest of us had to learn, to cook and all of those.
How to-
Yeah, we did all of those. So coming into marriage for me, I didn't have to think about it deeply whether there was a need to cook and do things like that because I was doing that already at home. But I did
Mm.
recognize, you know, there would be a need to, I could tell people, if there's a boat, there has to be a captain anyway. Right? But the truth
Yeah.
is, because if you don't have a captain, then and everybody's struggling, then the boat will go nowhere. But the truth is,
Mm.
there would always be a change in roles. For example, when we got married, we were back in Nigeria, of course. The kids were not
Mm.
that things were fine. Everybody does this. You do this, I do that, and all. I was there was no think. There was no need to think about it twice, right?
Yeah.
But however, after the kids started coming, things had to change. Okay, so my wife is pregnant. She can't cook. She's hungry. What would I do?
Mm.
So I did all of those so that she could, throughout the pregnancy and all of that. Then
Mm.
after giving birth, she would need to bathe the babe. She's tired and all of that. It's her children or it's her child. So I would do
Mm.
the bathing of the child once in a while because I had to go to work and all of those. But it's always been for us. It's always been a case of the roles change as per circumstances. When
Mm.
when we moved into the UK, I came in as a student. So I could
Okay.
20 hours, and my 20 hours cannot do anything. So up until about 2 months ago, she was handling most of the bills until I got a job that I could handle most of the bills. She was paying the rent, but I was just going to school and trying to make ends meet. So the
Mm.
change then, but it didn't mean that we had to struggle about who is in charge or any of those. So
Mm.
for us, it's been change as is required.
Yeah.
It's worked out fine.
And I
Can
think
I
that's also more or less what Mr. Tohib mentioned about recognizing the fluidity and always recognizing who you are from the get-go in terms of once you have your own values, it makes it easy. So, but we also know that, I mean, your stories are fantastic to listen to right now in terms of how both of you are able to manage and steer your families in spite of the overall or overhead noise of what the cultural or societal expectations are as a rule. But we know that there are stories, there are sub stories, there are painful stories that come from the diaspora. And as a therapist here in Nigeria, sometimes when I'm listening to when I'm working on certain cases, I just feel this twinge in my heart where there's a question: is it because the family relocated that there is that struggle? Or was there something missing from the get-go? So if you were to dissect that and you look at the overall experience, perhaps with friends or the interactions that you've had over time, is there anything specific that you believe happens to work or happens to keep families together, regardless of where they have migrated to or what the cultural expectation in that society is?
Want me to go first, or you want to go, Taib?
Yeah.
I think that's where you should go first.
Okay. All right. So, yeah. So the question is there something that can be done, like doesn't change the fact that they've moved or not? So one
Yes.
thing, the line that I've seen is, and I'm going to go a little bit into like Islamic terms, and I'll try to explain it here.
Okay.
Is that for the most part, men, the marriage is in, and I'm going to go back to patriarchy now. Marriage is in the man's hand. It's because like biyat okudat nikah, right? The person that's holding.
So you say that is Islam. Sorry to cut you. You say that is Islam, but we've always thought that it is the woman's job to maintain the family. That's what we were told as a woman
Okay,
growing up in.
Okay, yeah, okay. Let me clarify. Yeah, maybe it's the woman's job to take up. I mean, like the overall functioning of a marriage, like the person that's calling the shot. Right. Like I said, I'm going back to the
Patriarchy.
to patriarchy, like the oak data, the knot that holds the marriage I'm saying for the most part, the data is in the end of the man. And the reason why I said that is like actions are manifestations of mindsets, of our cognitions, of how we think through things. And some things will not cause problem in Nigeria because Nigeria has the structure that's going to check that. Let me give an example. So one time I was in Nigeria with my family, and my mom was also in Nigeria. So my mom was complaining about one of my cousins, which is her nephew in Cote d'Ivoire. It's just like Nigeria that, what he does, he just sits down, the wife brings him food and the wife has to bring the water for him, they don't want to do anything. Like, and I'm telling them, your cousin, don't you sit to him? I was like, Mom, like you have to be, understand where they are, right? Understand where they are. They're in in Africa, so maybe that's working like well for them, and the wife doesn't even see it as anything, right? So just like put a because my mom, she can go like she's like a female rights activist and something like that. The mom, people like context really matters, Mom. So let them, if the wife is not complaining, they're fine. And going back to what Mr. Jubat said regarding like there are children. If she's pregnant, she can't cook. The option that I have is to cook or starve, right? And men like self-preservation. I'll rather preserve myself and cook. So, for example, like if you give birth to a young baby in Nigeria, maybe the mother-in-law's coming, the sister-in-laws are coming, our mom Yahoo is coming. They don't even know that father. You don't even have to be there because everybody's carrying the baby, all of that. When you're living in Freeport, Long Island, New York, by yourself, and you're okay, nobody's gonna tell you, right? But that's when it comes like how flexible are the mindset of both the husband and the wife before they left Nigeria, like how reflective are they of their situations and knowing that actions are based on that. So that will really help, right? If you understand that, oh well, when we were in Nigeria, I didn't really help her with the baby because we had a maid, right? And my mother was there, and things were there. So she didn't even need to ask me. It didn't even like evolve into a problem. And
wasn't an issue
it
at
wasn't
all.
an issue because mind you, she was working as a teacher, or she's working and she took the, or she's the businesswoman. She just said that, okay, I'm not going to shop today. She can do all of that. And you have the money to be able to pay all the bills without that. So it's working perfectly fine. But when you cross over to this part of this world, and you know that to maintain a certain level of standard of living, both of you are working. Right? You are working 8 hours, she's working 8 hours, or or whatever hours that may be. And now you both come home, both times. Right?
Yeah.
You have a choice. You can say, well, I'm living, this is how we used to be in Nigeria, and it's still both of us. I'm still the man, she's still the woman. We got to continue this way. You can say that, and that's fine. But if she takes, so that can only work for both, right? You can say that, and that's your thing. Or you can say, well, if I'm thinking right, we are both now very, very tired. Okay, maybe if she's cooking dinner, maybe the house is messed up, and I can take care of the kid, and I can busy them with story and something like that. That is just a teamwork. That's not somebody putting somebody there. That just makes sense for both of you right now. So if we have that mindset of like, the reason why we did what we did in Nigeria that way, why she is because I want the best for her. And at that time, it looks like us sitting down, having sister-in-laws, everything come and then helping her out. And because I've worked in the Lagos traffic for like 10 hours, and I get home, I'm tired, I cannot do anything. She understands too. She wants the best for me. So we come together, and that roles,
Talk about
it works.
that. Yeah.
But over here, where the situation is different, then the actions has to be different. Where problem, like you've said, like the therapist that you've been doing, where the problem starts is we want to have our cake, like in Nigeria, and eat it at the same time without putting it in the fridge, right? So if you want all the largest of Nigeria living, of middle class Nigeria living, stay in Nigeria, mashallah. If you want the comfort, the quote-unquote comfort of the United States, of the West, of UK, it comes with some pain points too. Everywhere get their own problem, right? I just came back. I'm not gonna throw it to Mr. Juma. I just came back from Nigeria, and my wife and I, like, she was like, and I'm like, oh my God, I miss Nigeria. I want to go back to Nigeria. Like, and I was like, Nigeria, I can have like a big man. What are you talking about? Here, there's no big man for me. So it is about perspective. Choose your battles. If you want to stay in Nigeria, stay in Nigeria. If you come here, then understand that wherever we are, impact us. And it's not like the woman is trying to become a bad person, or a Nigerian man moved to Nigeria, it's just like trying to become a bad. No. Well, we have influencers, and we have to be very reflective. Sorry for taking too much time.
Thank you. It was really enjoyable with all your explanation of relatable stories about how the difference in the system or in the landscape really is. So, Mr. Jubek, for you, what would that be? What would your answer to this question be?
I would agree with him. That's Toib, that the environment affects us. However, I believe that whatever starts from in.
Yeah.
So one thing I know always work out fine is communication. If the couple have good communication, there is nothing that can cause, that can overtake their agreements. I give you an example. Back when I was in school, there's a friend that I know that he was dating someone, and they were close to getting married, and eventually they did get married, right? But they had agreed that no matter what the situation is, they cannot let any other person know that they have issues. They would settle it themselves, and they must settle it that day. So I got to that place one day. There was a heated argument. I knocked on the door, and everything went silent.
Right.
I got in there as if nothing had happened. You would wonder who were the people quarreling just a few seconds ago. The woman went inside. I started discussing with my friend. Food came, we ate and everything, and we just gisted as if nothing had happened. So if that had always been the case, even in Nigeria, before relocating, what would have happened would have been a discussion of what we are expecting. Oh, we expect that things would be difficult. I would be a student, I'll be working 20 hours. So that means I cannot do everything. So I understand. So I'll be the one that will take care of the house rent. What would my own money be able to cover? This bill, that bill, and this bill. You understand? So you would also sit down to look at how do we work. Because someone has to take care of kids. Who will take them to school on this day, that day? What's your schedule like?
Yeah.
Those things must be talked about. It's about communication. Because as humans, there's one thing that happens, and it happens to all of us. When we not communicate, we start playing movies in our mind.
Yes. So true.
You would see someone who would say, that guy that is coming, the way he's walking, he must be pompous. Just because of the way he's walking, she feels pompous. When he comes by and he tries to introduce himself, the next thing is the movie tells her, can you imagine? See how he's even talking. But you haven't heard anything. You do not know. But maybe while growing up, what you were told was that anybody who walks like this is pompous. Start playing movies in your mind. And the same thing happens in the house. You don't have discussions with your spouse. He gets you angry or she gets you angry, and you just say, and because we did UK, now they behave like this now. That movie has the next
has been done always.
Next thing that happens is we begin to make assumptions to support the movie we have started. Start playing that movie. If you get to the end, it's chaos. Always better down that ladder of making assumptions and trying to find out.
Not be okay. She's back.
Okay, she's back.
I'm so sorry about that. So one of the strengths of Nigeria is the network here. So we are almost to the tail end, and I wish we could just go on because I'm learning so much. I love the fact that you both agree about why values are important and why communication is important as well. But I'm also looking at this from the point of view of how important is the community. Because it's one thing for you and your wife, really, to agree about how you want to parent your children, right? But it's another thing to have to contend with a powerful culture